Yeah, 100%. Because you couldn't hear last time at all.
Okay, good evening. I call to the meeting, the Thursday, the 29th of February, special meeting, the budget meeting, at 6 o'clock. And we'll do roll call.
Jonathan Morehart.
Melanie Brady Shanley.
Nora Mukarski.
Tori LaVetri.
Jeanette Broder.
Renee Waldron. Sandra Strubar.
Okay, as a part of housekeeping, as we're being observed tonight on YouTube, if we could speak clearly into the microphones, that would be appreciated. And as part of also housekeeping is to not have side conversations while we're listening to the presentation, and to ask questions overtly, if you would, as you may have questions. So, we also have two members that have just joined the meeting. Would the record show Elizabeth just arriving at 6:01, and Shane arriving also at 6:01. Thanks, Barb. And now we'll move to the presentation of the Board of Ed budget.
Good evening. My name is Melanie Brady Shanley. I'm Superintendent of Winchester Public Schools. First and foremost, I want to thank the Board of Education for all of your insight, all the work that has been done on this budget. I believe that tonight you will find that we are presenting a budget that is responsible, fiscally constrained, quite frankly, and going to serve the educational needs of the children here in our town. I'd also like to thank our staff for their participation in this process. This process takes iterations, so it's nice to be able to have partners to be able to speak to the needs of what our children and staff need inside of our district. So thank you. We'll start the presentation with recognizing members of the board, our directors, and our principals. To start the presentation out, we always begin this process with the letter to the Winchester community. Basically, this letter is highlighting for us this particular budget has largely been driven by two main sources. One, our inflationary costs associated with energy and operations, and then the ultimate loss of grants, our non-lapsing fund, and carryover funds from the federal level. So what that will lead us to basically is the fact that you will find in this budget 0.58 of 1%, 58/100ths%, is negotiable in this budget. So that means out of our roughly $23 million budget, $133,000 of this budget is actually non-contractual numbers that we can adjust. So what that leads for town support for education is the requested amount will be $697,272. The appropriated request will be $22,819,465 for a total requested amount of $23,516,737. As you are aware, we've had budget meetings routinely throughout this process, and you can see the budget calendar is included. Our enrollment, both here at Winchester Public Schools and at the Gilbert School, ours will drop slightly due to the kindergarten age requirement for next year. So that means that about 25 to 30 kids who would have normally been eligible for kindergarten will be waiting until the following year to be able to come into kindergarten unless they apply for a waiver. And the Gilbert Schools enrollment has grown to 450 students projected for next year. Part of our conversation is ensuring that we keep our class size ratios within check in this process. So what you will see here on this slide is that at all grade levels, beginning with pre-kindergarten through grade 6, the number of teachers that we have in each grade, the anticipated number of students in each of those classrooms, and the justification that all classrooms will fall within class guidelines according to contractual obligations. The next page that I will show you highlights our personnel. So in the current 23-24 school year, we have between non-certified and certified staff members, 152 employees. We are keeping that number almost flat at 152.1 full-time equivalents. We are adding 1/10 of a position to the maintenance and custodial line for 1 extra hour of service at the Hinsdale School by the part-time custodian each day. So his hours will increase by 5 hours per week. So relatively flat employee year-to-year FTE equivalent. When we look at the funding of employees within our district, we have most employees that are being paid for through the appropriated budget, and we have other employees that are hired through grant funding. So right now, for this particular school year, we will have 77.2 full-time equivalents that will be paid for certified staff. 68.21 of those will be out of the appropriated budget, and 8.99 full-time equivalents will be paid for through grants. And that is a decrease of 1.69 grant-paid positions. In the non-certified category, we have 67.33 coming out of the appropriated budget, and we have 7.6 employee full-time equivalents being funded through grants. That brings our totals to what I just talked about, which was 152.1 full-time equivalents within the district, a change of 0.1 year over year. The next section that you come into is a description of all of the funding sources, state, local, and federal funding sources that our district participates in. So there is a narrative description of every single funding source within the district. In looking at the revenue sheet, to put this in perspective, the revenue is the money that comes into the district to support education. What you will see is that our education cost sharing grant, this is the money that comes to the town to support education, will remain flat at $7.823 million. Revenue to the Board of Education from the state, we continue to receive a grant in the amount of $14,000 to support adult education. We will continue to receive our Alliance Fund around $200,000. Our after-school program grant was $169,000. We have a quality grant for our Family Resource Center, which is a smaller stipend of $3,881. Excess cost, which offsets special education, is $562,000. Our Family Resource Center grant, which fully funds that program, is $112,000. And then we have school readiness grants, which fund Head Start, school readiness, and seats at Winstead Area Childcare in the amount of $313,000, for a total grant opportunity for the district of $1.377 million. When we look at the federal funds, we know that our federal funds are decreasing. So right now we have our mental health specialist grant. We have $70,000 we are anticipating there. IDEA, 611, 619 at $313,000. Part B of that is $15,000. Then we have our anticipated Medicaid reimbursement in the amount of $65,000. Title I in the amount of $274,000. Then we have Title II at $35,000. English language learner acquisition in the amount of $2,500. And then Title IV in the amount of $20,000 for a total of $796,000. When we look at other sources, we have some small local grants and custodial fees that we get funds from. So typically we are anticipating about $1,700 in custodial fees from our custodians having to work when the building is rented out. And then our critical needs fund from the Northwest Community Foundation, we typically get a grant from them in the amount of about $1,400. So when we look at the revenue to the Board of Education, what we are seeing is that we are receiving around $10 million. However, that is a decrease in revenue to the district of about $822,000 overall when you combine those areas. This shows us a graphical depiction of where most of our money goes to, or comes from, excuse me. So our state education cost sharing comes at about 78% of our revenue. Federal grants to the Board of Ed, which is this yellow slice, encompass just shy of $800,000. And then we have $1.377 million in state grants. And other grants are a small slice here of $3,100. So you can see graphically here that the largest portion of revenue that comes to us is from the education cost sharing grant. When we look at our projected resources, this covers all funding sources. So we are anticipating, and you will see in the budget presentation, a 6.11% increase in the appropriated budget. We are seeing a decrease of $192,000, including carryover funds, out of federal grants, which equates to a loss of 11.75%. Our Medicaid is going to be flat. You see here, and I have tried to explain this clearly throughout this presentation for you. Last year, the Gilbert School had a $200,000 capital request. They are not requesting a capital request this school year, so you will see that in a year-over-year comparison as a $200,000 deduction there. So that's a 100% reduction. When you look at the Alliance grant, we are anticipating any changes to revenue in that category. We are anticipating that we will go up in state and local grants in the category of $95,000, which is 8.8%. Our non-lapsing fund has been expended at this point. Town support for education, we are asking for a 0% increase there. And our CHAMPS after-school program is about $65,000, and we are not anticipating an increase there. So when we look at this here, year over year, our revenue will increase by about 1.74%, or $452,000. When we talk about combining and kind of maximizing areas to be able to save and affect money over the course of the year, we look at ways to partner with different organizations, mostly with the town, and then sometimes with other districts also, particularly with our insurance continuum. So we have fuel for vehicles, weather-related issues affecting schools, state reimbursements, grounds for fields that we share in, crossing guards, insurance, risk management, recreation facility sharing, the building committee work, some legal issues cross over, fire inspections, road work around schools, electricity, solar, and natural gas is some of the areas that we're combining services on. Under finance and human resources, we work together around the town pension, workers' compensation, unemployment, insurance for health, dental, and life, facility and liability insurance, and then our insurance consortium consists of 7 different towns and boards of education throughout Litchfield County, so that we could have a larger insurance base to be able to affect better rates. Historical appropriation expenditures, this comes to you from 2018 to 2019 to current, and it kind of just graphically depicts some of our ways that our spending has gone over the past few years. So what you really see is that personnel expenses routinely are increasing. Gilbert tuition increases. We see special education out-of-district costs. That does increase year over year. Transportation has been increasing year over year. And all other takes a very small area, and it's actually, as you can see here, a decrease year over year. I spent a lot of time preparing this particular page for you here. So one of the things that I would like you to be aware of is when we are asking for an increase of 6.6%, it is not because we have created a fiscal cliff here by using funds in ways that would have caused a local cliff to happen this school year. What I want you to do, and I'm going to take you on a little walk here to explain this chart, is on the left-hand side of the chart, you have seen this chart year over year. And this is a chart that we've routinely added to. What it does is it takes you through the appropriated budget and what the increases have been to the Board of Education since 2011 to current. So what you can see is this area right here where there's 0, 0, 0, 0, down to where we started to get increases in 21, 22 to current. Now, this does not include town support for education. However, it does talk about the appropriated budget. So what we did then is we took the inflation rate year over year. Had the Board of Education been funded minimally to the inflation rate, what you're seeing on the right-hand side is that the budget would have routinely gone up year over year. And it would have taken us to today. And instead of asking for 6.11%, we would be asking for a reduction of $57,000. Because we, for approximately 8 years, went year over year with 0% and didn't even match the inflation rate, it has caused a cliff. And that is why we are seeing larger numbers than what we could have been seeing had there been routine increases to the appropriated budget year to year. The next section talks about our object codes. This is a reference page for you before we get into the detail. When we talk about, at the beginning, I started the conversation with 0.58 of 1% is negotiable out of our budget. We went through all of the object codes and have identified the amount of money in each object code that is not contractually or legally bound for us to pay for. So without changing salary and benefits, because we have a year over year same FTE comparison, that area just stays the way that it is. If you look at anything from the 300 object code to the 800 object code, in professional technical services, all of those are required. In property services, all of those are required. Pupil transportation, we could negotiate the $6,000 that we've put in the field trip transportation line. Special education, required by law, an IEP. Gilbert tuition, required by law. All other purchase services has $27,500 in it that could be talked about. One is field experiences in there. Two is travel, and when I talk about travel, I mean reimbursement for staff for mileage, which I believe we put in $2,500 off the top of my head. And then our Indeed hiring platform fees that we pay to be able to find job candidates whenever we have openings. In supplies, we have $83,500. Those supplies cover Hinsdale, Pearson, central office, and the Gilbert School special education and service providers that are there. So instructional supplies are everything from pencils, crayons, science consumables, anything that a student may need to be working with in a classroom. Our nursing supplies, Band-Aids, cough drops, the supplies that our nurse uses. Technology supplies, if a microphone breaks or a mouse breaks, those types of supplies. Office supplies are for the secretarial staff, for mailings, any type of filing, paperwork, the day-to-day office supplies that any of our office staff could be using. So in that fund, there is $83,500 that could be negotiated. When it comes to lost, broken equipment, there is $16,000 set aside for desks that may break, chairs that may break, computers that may break, do not work, any type of equipment that may not make it through the school year or need to be replaced at some point. So when you add up the items in the budget that are not contractually bound or required by law, that leaves $133,000 that can be negotiated to a point, which means of our entire budget, 0.58 of 1% is actually negotiated. And what you can see is last year when we did this exercise, the number was 0.63 of 1%. So what I'm telling you is that we are now even tighter in terms of the negotiated amount that we have to be able to support education in this current budget that I'm proposing. So whenever you come down through the budget, the next part really breaks down the object codes in detail. And I'm not going to get into every single object code. It is in your book for reference. We have gone through those object codes multiple times. So it is there for your reference. There are notes on the far right-hand side for you. So I'm going to skim through these. Which brings us ultimately to our 24-25 proposed summary of the appropriated and town support budget. What you will see is that wages are going up 6.9%. Technical services will see a $4,500 increase. Property services decreases by $112,000 because we've moved a majority of all of those items into town support for education. Pupil transportation is seeing a 3.4% or a $48,000 increase, and that again is contractually bound. Special education costs are seeing a 7% increase by $115,000. Gilbert school tuition, and what you will see is at the bottom here, I do have an asterisk to explain this in more detail. You are seeing an 8.1% here, but that is because in fiscal year 23-24, we had the $200,000 in a capital reserve account. So now the tuition does not include a capital reserve ask. It is a tuition ask of 8.757, which represents a 655% increase year over year, even though really it should be 455 because 200 of that was in the capital reserve fund last year. All other purchase services is decreasing by $39,000. Supplies are decreasing by $10,000. Equipment and software is increasing by $3,000. And dues are down $7,000 because the board has opted to not renew the CABE membership. So when we look at the personnel and overall expenses here, what you're seeing is, if we scroll down to the bottom, 1.34 million is the increase, or 6.11%. When you look at WPS and the Gilbert School, we are literally we are within $3,000 of each other in terms of the increase in the budget. So overall, when you see this, and we look at town support for education, which I will show you, the overall ask less the 200,000 when you combine in town support is 4.98% when you take that $200,000 out. So this here shows you really a graphical depiction of where our funds primarily go. As you can see, the largest percent, 45%, goes to personnel, 38% goes to the Gilbert School tuition, 8% goes to special education out-of-district tuition, transportation at 7%, professional, technical, and other purchase services at 1%, and then supplies, and equipment, and dues is at 1% also. Our budget drivers, so anything that changes, you can see our biggest drivers here and how all the other object codes have minimal increases or decreases year over year. When it comes to town support for education funds the operational costs within the district. We are currently seeking overall 0% year over year. And then when you look at it holistically and you see that Gilbert is not asking for a capital ask in this particular area, it is actually decreased by $200,000 in that area because they had the $200,000 ask. But when it comes to the funding of the Winchester Public School, it is a 0% increase ask. And largely that is going to be due to electricity savings, solar installation that we are seeing there. Our out-of-district tuition for students, we are anticipating next year that we will have 2 students that will be in out-of-district placements with DCF, meaning DCF has placed them. We will have in pre-K to grade 6, 6 students who have been placed out. We have 5 students in 7th and 8th grade right now that are anticipated to be in out-of-district placements. And we are anticipating a total of 23 from Winchester that will be in out-of-district placements for grades 9 to 12. And we have 5 students who are in transitional services to 22. So what that does is that brings our total count of students that we are serving in out-of-district placements to 41, which costs $2.3 million. Our excess cost grant will give us back about $562,000, leaving a responsibility of $1.764 million. And that concludes my presentation to the board for our fiscal year 25 budget.
Thank you, Melanie. There's a lot of material here. As always, you've brought forward a very responsible, very fiscally clear, a budget that much of which we're obligated to work with. And I do have to point out that, so the community is aware, I know our people who have worked for the district have also worked with a number of grants, helping this community meet the needs of all students in the millions, and I think that's fantastic. I think that needs to be shared out there and celebrated out there, that we're really very cautious and careful about where the money is being spent, and creative in the ways in which we try to find revenue streams, and I think that's fantastic, and I think you've proven that again. I think that the fiscal cliff is very real, as you said, and you've warned for years. That's something that we have to worry about and be concerned about, and I think it's a very responsible budget in the way, in the direction in which we're going. Do you have any questions from anybody here?
Just for clarification from a question from last night. Just clarification from a question from last night.
Sure.
On page 20, the 27,500 for field experiences, travel, and Indeed, the hiring platform.
Yes.
I know Indeed, I know it well, but I was on the employee end of it. But we invest some of that money. How much of the 27.5 grand goes to Indeed?
Right now, it's about 10,000 that we have set aside for that. When we do hiring, it's about 10,000 a year that we're spending on advertising because it's so difficult to get educational candidates at this point.
Indeed. No pun intended. Just curious if I know for out of distance, for a larger distance, you have to pay a higher premium. If there was a small shed, just hypothetically, how would the distance decrease?
So the cost really depends on the number of individuals and the type of position that we are posting for. So if we are posting for a non-certified position where we're looking for a substitute or a paraprofessional or an interventionist, we will look within a closer radius to our address here. If we have a position, for instance, like a library media specialist position where we know that that is a shortage area for teachers, We have had that job posted since September this year and have still been unable to fulfill it. We will continue to spread our net, if you will, of hiring out further to hopefully garner a candidate. So that is the way that that works. So it really depends on the position and the competitive market for that particular position is how much we want to invest. It's up to us how much we invest and how much we will spend to look for a position.
Absolutely, thank you. I just wanted more details because I knew there was a certain tier to that, and I just want clarification. Thank you for providing it.
You're welcome.
Melanie, we're still considered an Alliance district, which
Yes.
is why we're receiving benefits of $200,000 in Alliance monies. How long do you think that's going to last?
It's really up to the legislator at this point. There is language, and they've been trying to do like a graduated alliance district that got put forward last year, and then it got taken out at a certain point. So it sometimes comes up in the legislator. Currently, right now, the language is not there,
Okay.
but it does come up from time to time.
Great. Just looking at staffing, I mean, we're working with narrowly an increase of staffing. So and at the same time, we're meeting all the needs of the students that we have inside the building. I think it's a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Because as you see, the budget, much of it is driven by staffing. But I think we've been responsible in that area, in the staffing numbers. Any further questions? Okay. So we're here tonight to accept the budget. And so we would need to make a motion for the budget as it's presented. Requesting a 4.98% budgetary increase. Breaking it down as you see on the front page. Do we have a motion? Excuse me.
Nora, can we just go back to the front page for the motion? Just for clarity's sake, please.
Sure.
Could we cite the numbers for town support for education, the appropriated budget, and then the total requested amount, please? It's on page 3.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do I have a motion to accept the Winchester Board of Education 4.9% budgetary increase equaling 1.114555? The specific request to include the town support for education totaling $697,272 with and an appropriated educational request of $22,819,465 for the total amount requested, $23,516,737.
Need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make that motion
Okay,
to
Ren-
approve the Winchester proposed, the budget for 24, 25 with the numbers that you just stated, Nora.
I'll second that.
Jeanette's 2. Renee and Jeanette. All in favor? That's unanimous, Barb. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Jonathan? Sandra?
Yep.
At 6:34 PM. All in favor of adjournment? Unanimous. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, everyone.